Welcome to Game. Hello, Internet. Welcome to GTLive.
Ooh, GTLive, where today we're presenting Tea Series, the series where we talk tea.
And we spill that tea, and we also sip that tea. Stephanie, what tea are you sipping today?
Well, there's a little chill in the air, and you said you were sick today, so I'm trying to go with something that's a little bit analgesic or antiseptic.
I was going to say, isn't an analgesic what you rub in like a wound to help heal that wound?
It's actually, it's just a painkiller. It's just a painkiller.
Is it really?
Yeah, an analgesic. It's just a painkiller.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Your world has changed just a little bit today.
Man, it's so true.
Today I'm drinking.
I just thought the mental image of you rubbing your hot tea into an open wound was amusing.
Oh gosh.
Picture that one, friends.
No, don't do that. I'm drinking jasmine tea today, and I'm drinking it out of. Oh, we have a new mug today. All right, cool. This was we get sent a lot of promotional.
It's a tea series. It's not.
Ooh, it's not.
It looks like it could be a tea series.
It could be though. It looks like it could be. Yeah, it has a big like gold tea on it. This is one of the promotional products that we get sent. Sometimes we get sent like promo packs and stuff, and a lot of them, especially for video games and stuff, have mugs, and so we end up with a lot of like random indie gaming mugs around here. It's actually a lot of fun.
So anyway, what is your tea of choice?
Today it's an organic jasmine.
Oh, delightful.
I know, it's looking really good, smelling really good. And what are you drinking today?
Let me smell you, Steph.
There you go.
Ooh, that does smell nice.
I know, jasmine-y and refreshing.
Yes, so fresh, so refreshing. What am I drinking today? I'm going back to an old standby, an old beloved favorite.
Unspecified no-calorie cola?
Close. Diet unspecified no-calorie cola.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we both have our drinks. Are you ready to go?
Our go-to drink of choice.
I'm ready for episode 3 of Tea Series. Welcome, you guys. Hope to be talking about some fun stuff today.
Yep, the series on the podcast, or the series on GTLive here, where we actually just talk about all the stuff that we can't really talk about while we play games. Stuff that doesn't quite fit in anywhere else, and things that, are just big, important news stories that are happening that we just want to discuss with you guys.
Yeah, stuff around, it's all stuff around internet and entertainment news, so stuff that would actually be relevant to us and to, like, hopefully you guys watching. But if you're new to this series, this is our 3rd iteration of it, so hopefully you like it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about. We've been doing it for a couple weeks now, and the response has been like
amazing.
Overwhelmingly positive. You guys have been like so into it, and you've been sending us new stories to talk about and requesting stories. So we've been trying to pick through some of those, and then also like come up with ones that we're just really interested in, because that's sort of the point of this series, is like stuff that we really are like itching to talk about but don't get a chance to do on a regular basis. So here we are, episode 3. Where are we starting?
It's been awesome, by the way. Thank you for your support of this.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun for us. It's been really refreshing. It's nice to be able to have a forum where we can actually talk about things that we weren't able to before. So to see the response from everyone and it being so positive has been great. And thank you all, like Stephanie said, for sending in topics and things like that. It's been fantastic.
And the whole point is that this is more talking. So if you are doing your homework in the background, if you're at work, if you're at school, if you're just hanging out and you're like, hey, I don't need to see what's on screen. You can just listen. If you're on your commute, we get a lot of people who are like, hey, I want to listen in my car, or I want to listen like right before I go to bed or something like that while you're brushing your teeth. You can do that. So this is a podcasty form that's intended to be able to be watched or listened to, just depending on whatever you have going on in your life.
But if you do want to engage with today, there are two ways that you can do it. One is in the live chat, which Stephanie has pulled up.
I do. And people are saying things like, oh, it's Tea Tuesday. And Alita.
Alita.
Yeah.
Alita.
Battle Angel.
Alita Battle Angel.
Wowzers.
It's great. Love it. Well done, guys.
Good work.
Pun
Good work,
game.
everyone.
10 out of 10. Would pun again.
Or you can engage with the stream using hashtag GTLive over on Twitter, just like a normal live stream. But if you are listening to it in a podcasty form later, obviously that doesn't apply. For today, as I lean away from the mic, for today, Chris has taken a rather liberal interpretation of tea for today's GTLive.
He's drawn a little minimalist representation.
He's
of
literally
today's live
drawn
stream.
3 leaves. We have 3 leaves: red, orange, and yellow.
It's very autumnal.
I was gonna say it's like we're drinking like the dregs of like October leaves that have fallen off the tree. A nice oak tea.
Maybe it's less that we're drinking the dregs and more working with the dregs.
Oof.
Sorry, Chris. Just a sigh from across the room.
Chris is not pleased. He's actually been
Chris
working
had a
really
rough
hard
day.
on the microphones. And also, guys, thanks for your feedback on the audio for these episodes. We've never done podcasting before, and so it's one of those things where I feel like there's a learning curve. Last week we actually had some like lag and glitching issues too, so we had a lot of feedback that like, hey, some of the audio was kind of like wonky from last time. That there's nothing we can do about without taking the stream down, completely re-editing it and uploading it. But as we like work out the whole mic system, like how far away should we sit from the mic, all of that kind of stuff. Thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for your feedback and like your like constructive feedback. We want to take your feedback. So just let us know how it's going for you, and we can work on it from there.
So to warm things up with a nice steaming hot cup of personal tea, Stephanie actually has some huge news that is really exciting. It's something that she's been working on for the past 6 years. So to kick off today, we like to kick it off with a little bit of personal tea, a little spot of personal tea.
I'm glad that you prefaced it with the fact that I've been working on it for 6 years, and so people can be like, oh my God, she's pregnant again. No.
Have you been working on being pregnant for 6 years?
No, because I'm saying that would be weird.
That would be
especially
very odd.
since we just had a baby last year.
It'd be like, wow, that was really unsuccessful for a really long time.
And then like bizarrely, weirdly successful all of a sudden.
Your brain just hops straight to baby Stephanie.
No, I hop to where the internet hops. If anyone's like, I have big news, it's either got to be like they're breaking up, they're getting married, or they're having a baby. It's got to be one of those things.
Launching a new series.
Or launching a new series. That's it too.
Merch.
Oh, that too.
More often than not,
it's usually merch. It's always merch.
People are like, let's talk about something serious. Merch.
Yeah. No, this is not it. Actually, so as of this past week, I am a dual citizen. This is something I've been working on, like Matthew said, for 6 years. In case anyone doesn't know, my family is Italian. I've talked about what a pizza snob my dad is, but besides just being a pizza snob.
Summary. Big pizza snob.
Big, very, very snob.
The TLDR, very snob.
Super pizza, very snob. So in addition to that, though, my family is actually very Italian. And I was able to apply for Italian dual citizenship because my grandpa immigrated from Italy but never renounced his citizenship, just became an Italian citizen. And the way that Italian law works is that you can actually go back and reclaim your citizenship within a certain number of generations, and I met the criteria, so I managed to go back and do this. Now, in order to do it, I had to like go to crazy lengths to do it. It's been a huge life goal and like accomplishment for me. What it also means is that we can apply for Matthew's dual citizenship now, so that he can come with me if we travel in Europe or we want to live there. We can go live there now. We can work there now.
I can also go around saying, "Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball."
No, you can't. Actually, as soon as you get
It's me, Mario.
As soon as you get Italian citizenship, you're barred from saying that.
Maybe
it's
it's
against
not,
the law.
maybe
It's
not
illegal
worth
there.
it.
You don't know that, but it is.
If that's what I'm sacrificing, Stephanie, maybe it's not worth it.
So
it's me, Mario.
And it's
I'm
also
not gonna win.
it also means Ollie, our baby, can get Italian dual citizenship, which means
A baby meatball.
Which means he can live and work and go to school if he wants to in Europe, and it's really awesome. So to do it, I had to like go to some really crazy lengths. If anyone doesn't know, like a lot of old records and birth certificates and stuff like that are handwritten, and a lot of them have major like copying mistakes. Like people are just really bad at proofreading, and so I had to go back and have like a ton of documents redone, and sometimes that takes like you have to like file motions in court to get documents like redone and to get names updated and to get like the misspellings corrected. So it literally took years. It literally took like 5.5 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say here, like, if in case anyone doesn't know, I would say relatively few people have actually tried to trace their lineage back. And to just give you an example of how robust of a process Stephanie had to go through for this, one of my favorite stories across the 6 years that she's been working on this was her literally going to a church in a town in the middle of like nowhere Italy.
Yeah, my family's hometown is like in the mountains of Italy, in southern Italy. It's kind of like, if you could think of like the most hillbilly part of the US, this is that, but for Italy. And I don't mean that in like a bad way or anything like that. I'm just like, it's very remote. It's like these people are like mountain goat herders and stuff. And so I went out to visit my family's old hometown, and I literally had to sift through our family records in a church basement. They were not being kept in like good shape. They were just like literally being like dry rotted to death in like the basement of a church, and I went through and had to take like photographs to preserve our family records and stuff. And that's sort of where it started. I had to go and change my own grandmother's last name as part of this process. That was a bit crazy. And I also had to find
Didn't you have to sue the state of New York for that?
I did. I had to sue the state of New York to get my grandmother's last name changed, which is crazy.
How did she feel about that?
She was not around to change it herself, which is why I had to do it. Suing the state of New York, it sounds a lot more dramatic than it actually was, but I did have to like file a motion. We had to go before a judge to get a name changed on those documents, which is like really crazy. And then I had to work with the Department of Homeland Security to track down my great-grandfather's birth certificate too. So like all of the like lists of immigrants that they keep on like watch lists in Homeland Security, they also keep really old records in there. So I had to work with like every government agency and every department in the country to try and make this work. And I was like over the moon. I'm just like so excited and happy that it finally happened.
It's also pretty wild because the Italian consulate, which is where you have to kind of go through, those are your kind of primary point of contact to submit the documents, hear what you're still missing, what needs to be done, whether or not you kind of pass or fail their series of kind of requirements. They would just go silent for months. And you literally send them an email and they'd be like, we'll let you know when it's done. 6 months go by and nothing. They're like really unresponsive. It was very difficult to work with. And I guess they're just like way understaffed and they can't handle like everything that they have to do or whatever it is. Italy is also known for like being kind of slow and bureaucratic, and by kind of I mean like very. Yeah, it's not siesta, it's riposo, but like it's the same principle. Everyone naps in the middle of the day. No one is in the entire country in August, and so like everyone takes a lot of breaks. Everyone takes a lot of breaks, and nothing really gets done very quickly. So it was just kind of dealing with that system. But now that that's the case, I'll have a U.S. passport and an EU passport, and Matthew and Ollie will also have US and EU passports, so we can basically go stay as long as we want in Europe, anywhere we want to in the EU. And this is actually something that we've wanted to do for a long time. So we have viewers all over the world, and we make a point of traveling to lots of different places. We love to travel, but one of the things that I really want to do is actually go and live in a couple other countries in a couple other cities specifically around the world for maybe 2 or 3 months at a time, to really understand different parts of the world and different cultures that we just don't get exposed to over here. So this is like sort of one step closer to that dream as well. Cool. Beautiful. That was my personal tea. Thanks for letting me share with you guys. It was really exciting. It was like a life milestone. So no, thanks for listening. No, it's exciting. And like I said, I'm excited to run around in my Italian mustache.
I'm telling you, they outlaw that. Oh, you can do that though.
I can eat cannoli.
A lot of
cannoli.
Yeah.
Pasta.
Yes, that too.
Do I have to pronounce it pasta fagioli? Pasta fagioli? Am I not allowed to say pasta fagioli anymore?
Oof, I don't know. My family, my dad might just not talk to you ever again.
Can I still go to the Olive Garden to eat? Because I am a fan of the Olive Garden.
Okay, but their soup and salad is amazing. Like, legitimately.
Yes, I know. I am a fan.
The unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks is, and I never use this term, but is everything. It is everything.
Oh, it is because it's unlimited.
It is literally. It's
it is
everything.
literally everything. At least when it comes to breadsticks and salad.
So while Matthew is honing his Italianness, we're going to move on to talk about more topics today.
Yeah, so let's talk about the big topic that's going around on the internet because we are primed for the release. So obviously we have game theory, but we also have film theory, the channel that everyone always forgets.
I feel so bad for film theory. Can we just like
give a moment
of silence for film theory? It's like super thriving and it does really well. And a lot of times, like some of the episodes that really pop on film theory do better than game theory, and yet no one from YouTube even recognizes that it exists. No one even knows. Forget about GTLive, but like film theory. It's just a 7.5 million subscriber channel, and no one even like pays any attention to it. I feel so bad for film theory. I love film theory.
Not in the slightest.
And we work just as hard on it. Like we still write all those episodes and stuff.
Right, but people could not be bothered to care. They're like, oh yeah, that thing.
Anyway.
But you're still a gamer, and also,
But you're a gamer.
It's like
that's the box you'll always live in.
I like to think of myself as a pop culture educator personally. So anyway, we have this channel called Film Theory, and obviously one of the things that we cover a lot on Film Theory are movies, specifically Marvel movies, because they're some of the biggest movies in the world these days. Also, some of the
because they get the views.
Well, no, also because they're some of the best, most interesting movies that are happening. Like, I would argue that a lot of the Marvel movies that have come out over the last 5 years are some of the best movies to come out in their respective years.
Yeah, they're some of my favorite movies. I mean, and it speaks to that like Black Panther was up for so many accolades this year, and I mean these are like they're great movies, not just like cult fan like superhero lover movies.
Right, it's one of those things that you don't have worldwide success and renown just off of like a niche comic fandom. People are responding to these movies because they're just really good, really well put together movies. Yeah. The characters are dynamic and vibrant. They're funny. They're well scripted. And one of the things I appreciate most about the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I think a lot of other people have struggled to achieve when they've tried to create their own cinematic universes is each Marvel film feels slightly different, right? They each feel in their own genre relative to the character in question, right? So, you think about the Thor, especially the early Thor movies, those were kind of like your Shakespearean ones with like a superhero tinge to it, more fantasy,
dark
more like
and serious,
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Before Ragnarok kind of changed it up. You have your Captain Americas, which were much more like espionage, kind of like Jason Bourne-esque movies, or like historical fiction movies, which were really fun. And then obviously you had your big blowouts with like Avengers and things like that. You had your like buddy space comedies. Your Ant-Man was very much like just a comedy, like your typical kind of Paul Rudd-esque comedy.
I loved Ant-Man.
Ant-Man, I think, is totally underrated.
Yeah,
a lot of people are like, yeah, Ant-Man.
I don't know if it's a hot take or whatever, but Ant-Man is actually like it's one of the upper echelon of Marvel movies for me.
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp, not quite as strong as the original, but I really enjoyed the first one a lot. Yeah. I think the humor worked really well in it. I think it was, the third act was really creative with all the shrinking mechanics and kind of contrasting epic comic book style battles in like small scale versus big scale. It was great. But anyway, the reason why we're focusing on this one as the top story of the day is because Captain Marvel, obviously a huge release for the series, is coming out this week, and it's a bit controversial. You have a lot of people who are speaking out very vocally online, outright arguing to boycott it. And not just boycott it, but boycott it in a very specific way.
Yeah.
It's not just, I'm not going to go see this movie, Captain Marvel. It's, I'm not going to go see Captain Marvel, and instead, I'm going to go see another movie, Alita Battle Angel.
Yeah. And I think the first place we should start in talking about this is to say that everyone in the chat loves Ant-Man.
Yes, thank you, chat. You are
Kaya
correct.
Carter,
Thank
Moondrop, Nalisha Boots, everyone has been commenting that Ant-Man rocks. Jennifer Sauer.
This is why we like you guys.
So yeah, good taste, everyone, first of all. But yeah, so this Alita Battle Angel. Keep practicing.
I'm practicing my Italian. Right, this is what Italians do. They do the little.
Matthew's doing like the kissing.
Kiss off.
No.
Is that not it?
So the reason why, I guess to the best of my understanding, right?
Yeah.
The reason why people are going to see Alita Battle Angel instead of Captain Marvel is to protest what they view as the shoehorning in of a woman into the Captain Marvel role, right? So they're like, we're gonna go see Alita Battle Angel because the manga always it's always focused on. Right?
Yeah.
The manga's always focused on this female protagonist. It's always been a woman, okay, this is the character, this is who she is. We're going to go see this one. As opposed to what they view for Captain Marvel, which is like, hey, this character could have gone either way, and this is
because the character's history was both male and also kind of female.
Also kind of female.
It's a very confusing character history.
Yeah, it's a very complicated lore backstory, but this movie is coming out not only as like, oh, hey, Captain Marvel is a woman, but also this is specifically and sort of unapologetically a feminist movie, and the whole point of it is to be a feminist movie. And they're like, no, we don't want a feminist movie. We don't want SJWs and stuff. We're okay with a movie where the protagonist is legitimately and has always been a woman, but if you're just making Captain Marvel a woman so that you can make this a feminist movie, we're out. It's a weird way to go about it, being like, we're not going to go see this movie with a female protagonist, but we're going to go see this other one.
It's also one of those things. So there's a lot of issues. Right? Anytime this sort of stuff pops up, there's a lot of issues that are going on, right? So you have some of the comic fans who, like, Captain Marvel as a character has never particularly resonated as strongly as other ones. So you have this kind of like convoluted backstory, a less well-known character, a less beloved character, already a problem there. You have a lot of Disney being seen as inserting a lot of social justice warrior messaging in the Star Wars franchise, with both The Last Jedi and also Solo, a Star Wars movie, where in Solo you had kind of this like strong female android who's standing up for robot rights in a very thinly veiled parallel to real world like activists. In Last Jedi, there was a lot of complaints about the treatment of Jedi lore and, inserting in these strong characters. And now they're worried that this is happening again in the MCU for the first time with Captain Marvel. It's also interesting, too, because Brie Larson, who's the actress who is playing Captain Marvel, isn't doing anyone any favors either, or at least
I was going to say a lot of people in the chat are pointing out that it's because Brie Larson, the perception, right, is that Brie Larson does not like men.
Yeah, so and I pulled these up just so that way I get the quotes right, because in these sorts of situations you always see people kind of twisting the words that are said or citing only very specific quotes, and so I believe that these are kind of the full quotes that people have kind of latched onto and started to really react to in a very negative way, right? So this one's from Time Magazine, where she was talking to the interviewer about A Wrinkle in Time, right? So her quote is, "I don't need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work about A Wrinkle in Time," Larson said. "It wasn't made for him. I want to know what it meant to women of color, biracial women, to teen women of color." Larson elaborated on this point, saying that it wasn't about excluding white men, but including those who have historically been marginalized. Am I saying I hate white dudes? No, I'm not. What I am saying is if you make a movie that is a love letter to women of color, there is an insanely low chance a woman of color will have a chance to see your movie and review it. So that was one, and then a separate interview. The interviewer... I was thrilled you requested me to interview you. I thought this is game-changing. It's the biggest opportunity I've had. Nobody usually wants a chance to talk to a disabled journalist. I'd love to know what your particular reasons for having me here were. Larson responds, "About a year ago, I started paying attention to what my press days looked like, and the critics reviewing movies, and I noticed it appeared to be overwhelmingly white male. So I spoke to Dr. Stacy Smith at the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, who put together a study to confirm that. Moving forward, I decided to make sure my press days were more inclusive. After speaking with you, the film critic Valerie Complex, and a few other women of color, it sounded like across the board they weren't getting the same opportunities as others. When I talked to the facilities that weren't providing it, they all had different excuses." So those are the quotes that have really, that the internet's latched onto, and that's gotten people to really kind of respond with negativity towards this movie, towards her as an actress, and toward this, for these these viewerships to feel like this, the way Brie Larson is talking about this is not a movie for me, white male fan of the MCU universe. Thoughts?
So, I mean, this is an incredibly complex issue, right? And I also want to point out, you have already seen Alita Battle Angel, right?
I have seen Alita Battle Angel. It is much better than I expected, actually. I have not seen Captain Marvel. I have seen Alita Battle Angel. Let me throw it out there.
Not because of the controversy. He just got.
I got in there early, guys.
We got invited to a screening of Alita Battle Angel, which is awesome, and I wasn't able to go. So you were the one who was there.
Yeah, and it's really good. I don't have any connection with kind of like its anime origins, the manga, anything like that. But as someone who went in kind of expecting it to be a bit of a hot mess. Just because, I don't know, like from the trailers and stuff, I'm like, I don't know.
There were a lot of ways, based on the trailers, there were a lot of ways you could see it going wrong. And also, I will point out that stuff like Ghost in the Shell, other movies that we've seen that have been based on an anime or a manga, they sometimes get interpreted very strangely on film, right?
And,
I think you were fair to be skeptical going in.
Yeah, and I will say, like, Alita's great. I think it's a flawed movie. I think that it tries to do too much in a very short runtime.
I think everyone pretty much universally agreed with that like, hey, they had to fill a ton of the manga into the background, and so there was so much world building that it was very hard to get like to the pinnacles of the story. Yeah, but I think that was like, I don't think you're saying anything that anyone else hasn't said, like, a bunch.
No, my review of Alita is basically they set up a very cool world. They set up very cool characters, but it's a very complicated world, and it's a very, like, robust, deep, engaging world. And so for me, like, to cram all of that into the span of a movie and then also deliver a plot line, but also set up potential sequels, it was dealing with a lot. And so certain character motivations, certain key beats, certain big changes in the plot feel like they're a bit rushed through, and you're like, oh, that was... it's day 4 and she's already rebelling against her dad. That's kind of strange. It's one of those things that I wish had been a Netflix series or, a TV series or something that had a little bit more breathing room and a little bit more time where you can immerse yourself in the world, where you could actually get to know these characters a little bit better and nothing had to be kind of rushed through at the pace that it was. That being said, though, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I think it was a lot of fun. Is it the best movie that I'll see this year? No, certainly not. But I fully support it. And if you're interested in, kick-ass anime girl, just ripping through hordes of evil androids and cyborgs, 100%. If you want to see Christoph Waltz wandering around with a giant, like, Fortnite-style pickaxe that's powered by a rocket jet, it's wild. It is so out of left field.
Sign me up.
But it is a blast to watch.
So that being said, thoughts on Captain Marvel. I want to call out this comment that says, and it's from Mar Benman, who says, I'm not going to see Captain Marvel, not because of the drama, because I've already seen Alita anyway. I'm going to see not going to see Captain Marvel because it doesn't look interesting to me. And I know I am not a woman of color, but I am a woman, and I like seeing. I know, shocker, right?
I was about to say, this is, man, we're spilling all sorts of tea today.
And I really enjoy seeing female protagonists. Matthew can tell you my favorite movie genre in general is British period pieces with a strong female lead. That is literally the like Netflix category that best describes me. I like spunky, smart female leads who are smarter than everyone around them and who like sort of kick butt and take names. So I'm actually really into that whole idea. I will say though, for me, Captain Marvel just didn't look like it had a ton of personality. For me, the trailers didn't resonate with the kind of like fun, quirky MCU personality that I'm used to seeing and get excited about seeing on screen. When it comes to the controversy, and again, I think we can only give our opinion here, and we are not coming from a minority stance, right? So all of that take that with a full grain of salt. But for me, I really enjoy seeing female empowerment. I have no problem with female and like feminist undertones, but no matter what the political issue is, I really don't like to be beaten over the head with it in my entertainment. I am happy to pick up on subtler messages, and I'll like pick them up, and those will like hit me, and I'll be like, oh wow, that was great that they put a great message in there, or that they promoted people who are underrepresented, or communities who are underserved in media or movies or television or whatever. But for me, I really don't like being heavy-handed with that kind of stuff. I just like to be immersed in the story. The story is great. If the story is great, put all the messaging in there that you want. But I think for me, I just need an awesome story to come first. And then the messaging will only be helped by a great story.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally, I totally agree, and I think that's definitely worth talking about. Before we get into the weeds about that, I think it's interesting first to call out A Wrinkle in Time and kind of her critique of critics saying you don't have a right to kind of judge this movie. I love kids movies. I think I do. I love them. I love how fanciful they are. I love
Matthew
how creative
cries
they are.
during most Disney movies at this point.
Pixar will get me almost every time. And they're some of my favorite. I am so eager to go see every new kids movie out there. Not everyone. There are some that I'm like, okay, I'll pass on that one. But like, I'm so eager to see a lot of these because they're just fun. At a time when things are so serious online and offline and this and that, like, it's just nice to kind of go and immerse yourself in some like mindless kind of fun. And Wrinkle in Time is one of my all-time favorite books. I was so excited to see A Wrinkle in Time because I love that book. I love the worlds it creates. I love the characters. I love it all. And you too. You also
oh my
like
gosh,
A Wrinkle in Time.
I was such a diehard for Wrinkle in Time, and I was like, we saw the first trailer of that like 8 months before it came out or something, and I was like, oh my god, put it on the calendar. We're going now.
Yeah, we were super excited for Wrinkle in Time, and it was terrible. Like, it was really bad.
And again, we are saying this as people who are white and who just came from loving the book and who like.
I'm saying this as someone who likes good movies. No, and this is the thing, and I think this is the thing that people nowadays are kind of having this knee-jerk reaction to of, I don't care, like the color of your skin, whether you're male or female, and I get that some people do, but for me, I care about a well-told story with consistent characters that makes sense.
I care about that, and that's also central for me when I think about it. I think the perspective that that Brie Larson is I think trying to get to, and again, I like should not be interpreting what other people say. This is only like my like how I'm reading it, is that we are in a position where it doesn't matter to us and we don't care because there's no problem with seeing people like us reflected back on screen.
Sure.
But if you're someone who never sees yourself represented in media, it's the kind of thing where that really does matter to you, and maybe no matter what the story is or like what's around it or whatever, just seeing yourself on screen is significant.
Sure.
So that's I think that's the perspective that she's trying to get to. I have trouble with it because I'm like, am I still allowed to call this a bad movie? Because I thought Wrinkle in Time was a real bad movie, but I don't know.
But I to say that you're not allowed to have an opinion on a movie because you are of a certain color or I think that's a challenge.
It's real tough, yeah.
That's tough because art is to be consumed by everyone, and some people are going to like it and some people aren't, and some people are going to respond to it and some people aren't. That's fine. We make YouTube videos, and there's a subset of people who love our theories and who get them and understand the point of them, and like, hey, it's goofy and fun to overthink your favorite franchises. And then there's a group of people who think I'm the cancer of the internet because I overthink their favorite franchises. And I get it, and that's fine. It makes me sad that other people don't get it and they think I'm being mean-spirited or things like that, which I don't intend to be. But, that's just the essence of putting a public thing out there for people to consume and comment on. And so do I recognize that Wrinkle in Time, is a story that was a movie for young kids? Absolutely. And I think the bright colors and fanciful characters and this and that would probably attract a lot of people. But for me, as someone who also goes to kids' movies and really enjoys the ones that have well-crafted plots that make internal sense and have characters that I can, like appreciate their journey. I'm not saying like I can relate to, but I can like see their motivations. I'm like, yes, go for it. Girl of color or not color, whatever. Great. Like, as a movie critic, as someone who watches movies critically,
you have to be able to state an opinion.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think
it was just not
right.
a well constructed movie. It did not achieve what it set out to do from a narrative standpoint. And so like that to me is the trick here. And I had the same reaction with Last Jedi, right? And I don't think Last Jedi, I didn't feel the political I felt it with like the casino scene where you're like, this is weird.
Yeah.
This feels a bit preachy, and this feels kind of needless to the overall plot. But from The Last Jedi, everyone's like, people didn't like it because of the social messages and this and that. I just didn't like it because it's, you're a part of a franchise that sets up a bunch of different like loose threads and promises to fulfill on those loose threads on the second part of that, and then all of those get undermined. It is a movie that was specifically meant to frustrate and undermine, like the whole goal of it was to undermine the expectations of the audience, right?
Yeah.
And so as an audience member, when I'm set up to expect certain things and I get undermined and get frustrated.
You were frustrated.
That's the response.
Yeah.
Like, congratulations, you got the response and you got like a level of feedback. And so I was disappointed in that movie.
Yep. And to round out this discussion, I wanted to read a couple of things from the chat because I think there are a few people who have some really good perspectives. So, Kaspar Yeager says, surely you're represented by the traits and acts of characters rather than their race, gender, and sexuality. And I actually love that idea. Again, we're speaking from a stereotypical standpoint or whatever, but when I relate to a character, I relate to how they act in certain situations, what kind of motivation I think they have, whether I think they're, facing interesting decisions or like moral quandaries in their life. And I think that's what makes you relate to someone the most. I've also, I relate to a lot of male protagonists on screen that I see because I'm like, oh, I understand you. You think like me and you make decisions like I would make decisions, and I relate to that. So I think that's a good message. And then also, D Spectrum Man says art is for everyone, which I also agree with. Walrus says, I agree. I'm gay, and representation the correct way, not stereotypical, is significant for me.
Yeah, I think it's I think a really good parallel here is Wonder Woman, right? So Wonder Woman, really the first major, at least modern major female-led superhero movie, right? Mm-hmm. And she was a good character who happened to be a female, and then everything, happened to be a strong female, and then everything kind of fell into place. I think where you're seeing a lot of the pushback here, and where a lot of these comments leading up to the movie and this and that, and why people are worried about this one, boycotting this one, reacting more strongly to this one, is it feels like they're positioning it, she's a woman who's a hero, she's a woman who's a character. Like, yeah. the her-ness is the more important thing rather than her being a character. And I feel like that almost defeats what you're trying to go for, right? Like,
it feels a bit like tokenism at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
And again, like, I'm not a good person to speak on this, but to me, looking from the outside in and who has no stake in the game whatsoever, and just like, I just like good movies, I like good characters, to me, like, she is defined by her actions, not by her gender. And to me, as I watch the trailers for Captain Marvel, it's the least excited I've been. I'm not boycotting it or anything, but and I'm absolutely going to go see it because I love Marvel movies, and it's partly my job too, of course.
We'll be there.
But it's one of those things where it's the least excited I've been for a Marvel movie, and I'm seeing it out of obligation because it's the midpoint between Endgame and Infinity War, but it's one that I would have been I'm less eager to see, not because she's a woman, not because she's a character that I have no past connection with and she's not interesting. The trailers just haven't sold me on it. I don't think like the line deliveries that they've selected to put into the trailers are particularly compelling. The idea of a Superman-like superhero is not super exciting to me. Building out this whole idea of like the Celestials. And I'm also just quite frankly worried about the movie in general because it feels like it's going to be saddled with a lot of baggage. It has to be the bridge between Infinity War and Endgame, so you have that kind of connective thread of everyone's going to see it because what clues is it going to reveal for Endgame? It's a prequel because it's set in the 90s, and so it's setting up all this stuff that we know is going to happen in the early MCU movies. So it's saddled with that. It's also having to kind of bridge the gap into the next era post Endgame.
It's a hugely important movie, actually.
It is. It's this huge inflection point, and I think that what we're going to end up seeing, and I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, I haven't seen it. We're going to see it later this weekend, but I feel like it's going to be one of the first of the MCU movies to suffer because it has so much baggage in much the same way that Batman v Superman suffered, because it had to set up it had to set up the Batman v Superman element, but also all the all the Justice League members and this and that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be saddled with all that. So I'm worried about it. I'm still going to go see it. I've also, seen Alita. I'm
going to put a button on this by just reading off a couple more perspectives from the chat, because I think that's important in this, especially in the context of this topic. The first one is from Zane Williams. Honestly, I tend to brush off bad writing a little bit more when I see a character who is of color or LGBT. I don't totally, but it doesn't matter to me as much if I see myself represented.
That's interesting.
And then AJ Calmy, says, personally, the fact that my expectations were undermined is what made me love The Last Jedi. It was an approach I never saw, and I found it refreshing. There was also someone who identified as a person of color who was like, you know what? Wrinkle in Time was just bad. And so I agree with you. Okay.
The last thing I'll say about this, too, is I know that Alita, and one of the things that caught me off guard by this story is the fact that it's like, oh, we're not seeing Captain Marvel because it feels like a strong female character is being shoved in here. It feels kind of, oddly, it doesn't seem to fit. It feels social justice-y. So we're going to go see Alita instead, who is, by her character and by every intention of the movie, strong and female, but, it doesn't feel like it's artificially shoehorned in. I think that's a bit challenging of a stance, because Alita being kind of this anime robot girl, like, you fall into this weird territory of, yes, she's a girl, but she's also a robot. So, like, she's already dehumanized. Yes, she's a girl, but she also has the big anime eyes, which kind of goes back to this idea of,
which
like,
makes her look like a baby.
Makes her look like a baby, makes her look more beautiful, more attractive to men. She's young, and so you have this kind of weird dynamic where and also Alita does have a weird scene where, like, she suddenly grows up and she becomes, like, this sexual figure, like, midway through the movie, and it, like...
Really? What are you watching over there? I mean, I didn't make it to this screening. Holy cow.
She gets her adult battle body, basically, and she's like, I'm going to make some adjustments to myself, and suddenly, like...
She puffs up her boobs.
And she gets a little puffier, That's all. And so I in print, like, not in principle, I in theory understand what people are trying to, like, hey, we're going to show that we're not anti-female by going to see this other strong female, but
I get that it's weird. I get that that's weird.
You might want to double check kind of the movie that you're going to, because it might not be sending the right messages there either. Like, it's a tough thing. And the problem with all of this, I think, is that at the end of the day, if Captain Marvel underperforms, or if it doesn't, like, it's going to be attributed to, like, this political message where it's a movie.
Yeah.
Like, in a lot of cases, it's a movie, And I think that's the problem that Last Jedi had. I think that's a problem with a lot of these movies nowadays, is when they start getting wrapped up in political messages, you can't have worthwhile criticism about them in a lot of cases, because there's always the counter argument of, oh, well, you're anti-women, or, oh,
you're racist.
You're racist or whatever. And it's like, no, I just want to talk about the movie without all the other stuff around it. Can you? Ooh, that's deep.
Ooh, can you?
Can you separate art from the politics around it?
I think less and less so. I think we're moving to a place where everything is wrapped up in everything else. But I think we've covered that one pretty well. Yep. We should probably move on, switch topics.
Okay, so coming to a theater near you. One of the other things that we want to talking about strong, man, today is the theme of strong independent females.
Wait, what's
right?
Next?
So the Oscars happened not too long ago.
Yeah.
And this was an interesting story that kind of rose out of the Oscars, right? And I thought that this was really interesting to talk about. So Lady Gaga, she's a popular one.
Her real name is Stephanie, which I appreciate.
Not Stephanie in the way that you spell it, though.
I know. She spells it wrong, but she's Lady Gaga, so I kind of have to give her a pass.
Are you a little monster, Stephanie?
Wait. Is that what aren't they? Isn't it just the monster?
Oh, maybe you're just a little monster.
I am a
You are
a
a teeny monster.
Short monster.
You're a teeny monster.
Yeah, but she spells it, I think, with an F and an I, both of which are just egregious. But you know,
Wow.
she's a superstar, so she really doesn't care what I think.
So Stephanie with a PHIE over here is throwing shade at Lady Gaga Stephanie with an F and an I. Just like the people in her past. So the story here is basically
Oh no, don't you lump me in with those trolls.
So Lady Gaga won herself an Oscar, and making her what is it exactly, Chris? She won a bunch of awards all in the same year. She's the first person to win an Oscar.
She didn't win a Grammy this year, did she?
Not a Grammy, but she won a bunch of awards all in the same year. Obviously, she's super celebrated. You know, multiple Grammys, world-renowned singer, actress, multimillionaire, whatever. The thing is, though, all of the people in her life when she was growing, she had a really neglectful boyfriend. Who badmouthed her, kind of verbally abused her, said that she would not be worth anything one day. Yeah, she was bullied by other people throughout high school and college. There was actually a Facebook group dedicated to basically the Facebook group was called something along the lines of "Shut up, Stephanie, you'll never be famous." You know, kind of stuff. Like, just
as a fellow Stephanie, that hurts.
Just like the meanest, most bullying stuff out there, and it's so sad. First off, that people, you know, would just fixate around that. And I don't know how she was in college or things like that, but then to go on and basically as the biggest screw you ever, go on to become Lady Gaga, one of the most celebrated, you know, musical artists of the last decade.
Usually my view on getting revenge on people is that it's never worth it. And a lot of times, especially if you're going for like revenge on the people you went to high school with or something like that, like bothering to enact revenge shows that you cared too much about it to begin with. But I will say that moment had to be so awesome. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan of Lady Gaga, and have, you know, been for years. I think she's really just interesting person. And this story about her, like, really, I think shows, I don't know, I think it presents like a really hopeful message to people who are bullied. And I think, you know, for a lot of us, who grew up being like geeky or nerdy or felt different, and there's still, you know, like obviously tons of people out there who feel that way in schools. I think a lot of retribution has come from like the rise of technology and like how successful the nerds have become. And Lady Gaga is sort of another version of like that story where being different and being outspoken and being yourself, and being put down for it in school, but sort of staying true to that and yourself pays off in the end, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I read these articles about, you know, the kids in high school making a Facebook group dedicated to like, no, you're not going to be famous. The boyfriend who basically, you know, put her down multiple times and was like, hey, you're not going to go anywhere, like just give it up. It reminded me a lot of actually my high school experience too, where, you know, my family was super encouraging. I was fortunate to be brought up in a household that's like, hey, do whatever you want, you know, be confident in who you are, be proud of who you are, be proud of what makes you unique. And, you know, and I lived that mantra, right? I really, truly believe when my parents said, hey, you're special, you're unique, I truly latched onto that. And I'm like, I will kind of like, you know, make that kind of the core of who I am and be proud of it.
Snowflake.
But
no,
that's the thing, though, right?
I think that it's incredibly empowering, and I think that has served you so well.
Well, and it's one of those things where in high school the same thing happened to me, where like it wasn't a Facebook group that was made about like, you know, how you'll never go anywhere, but when I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go to a good school, like. I remember very distinctly there was because I won a lot of academic awards, because I did a lot of different things, I was the Northeast Ohio Gold Star student for selected of all the students in Northeast Ohio by this one newspaper, and they followed me around for like 2 days out of my life to like do a report on this kid named Matthew Patrick who's going places. And as part of, you know, the interview process, one of the quotes that they chose to keep in of the final article was, later this year or next year, I'm going to Duke University, and Duke better get ready because they've never seen anyone like me. And all of the kids in high school use that line against me like nobody's business, because making fun of me.
How
being like,
so?
Well, in terms of like, oh, how arrogant are you? How cocky are you? Like, how dare you think something like that? And I'm like, well, it's true.
How dare you think you're unique?
Yeah, no, I mean, but that was really what it was.
Yeah.
Right? Where they actively belittled me because I was so, I don't know, like confident or secure in myself to be like, yes, I am unique and I do have something special to offer. And they have never seen a person named Matthew Patrick who has my unique skill set. Like, that is just an objective fact, I think. It would be really random if they had a Matthew Patrick who also went down to Duke University and did theater and neuroscience and was an RA.
Well, also, and this is not to give you a bigger head or anything. I want you to be able to fit through the door. But
I find that walking through doors in profile after you get a big head helps because your head grows more horizontally than it does back to front.
Take notes. But I mean, it was the kind of thing also where I feel like you had some bragging rights as well, because you were going on a full academic scholarship, which meant that as like in the class pool of Duke University students, of which I was one and did not receive the same scholarship, but among that class, you were unique, or you were, accomplished in a way that was different and interesting enough that they wanted to pay for your education, which, I think is something to be proud of. And I think it is really hard when you are in a position where you feel like you have to hide who you are, or kind of worse, hide what you've accomplished and what you're genuinely proud of. This story also reminded me of being in school. I was like, I didn't have a newspaper follow me around for a day, but I had like a different, lifestyle than I guess like my peers in a lot of ways. I was homeschooled for a long time. I was different. I was not cool. I did not have any cool clothes. I did not listen to cool music. I didn't fit in.
I don't know. I've heard your playlist from back when you were in middle school.
It's
and high
great
school.
stuff. Okay.
Stephanie listened to some hard music. You were listening to some hardcore stuff.
I had eclectic tastes, some of which included some pretty hardcore West Coast rap. I'm not gonna lie.
She was thugging it.
She's
thugging it.
I was angry because of how mean everyone was to me. No, but there were situations like one example was that I found out by like, showing up one morning. My best friend at the time came up to me and was like, "Hey, I need you to know, there was a get together last night. There was a party. Everyone was hanging out in a room together, and someone randomly, said, hey, everybody, raise your hand if you hate Stephanie."
What?
They were going. I don't know if it was like a truth or dare situation or whatever it was, and I was like, "What happened? What happened when someone said that?" And ironically enough, the guy who apparently brought up this question was the guy.
It was a guy?
Oh yeah, and it was the guy I had a crush on.
Oh no! Well,
Yeah.
maybe he was taking a straw poll about whether or not he should have a crush back on you.
Apparently, everyone raised their hands.
Whoa!
This was my best friend delivering this news. They were there. She was like,
and she raised her hand.
everyone
too?
raised their hands, and I asked her. I was like,
"Oh, did you? Wow."
I was like, "Did you?" And she was like, "Well, everyone else did."
Oh no!
Yeah. And I mean, imagine you're 13 and everyone else in a room is raising their hand except for you.
Yeah, you don't do it.
I mean, you shouldn't, but in reality, you probably would. I didn't hold it against her.
See, this is
but it was the kind of thing. Which how could I? I apparently didn't have any friends. So
no. See, here's the crucial difference between you and me, Steph. You had friends to come back and tell you that those things happened. For me, I remained blissfully ignorant that they probably did happen, but I would not know.
And these
benefits of not having friends.
And I mean, these are people like I had never said anything bad about them behind their back. I had never done anything to them. I existed and I was different and I did not fit in with them. And I wanted to really desperately. So I probably also came off as a bit of a tryhard, but I never did anything offensive to them in any way. They just really hated me. And that's just kind of the way it was. And so, yeah, I mean, it feels good to be like, I don't know, to have to do something that I'm like, hey, this is really interesting. I'm using my life to do something cool, fun, valuable that I love and that benefits other people and that helps people around me. And I have like, to be successful in life just makes you feel good about that and makes you feel better about the kind of stuff that you like go through in middle school or high school or whenever it is. But yeah, I mean, I think it's tough regardless.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, what is it? What's the phrase? The best revenge is a life well lived.
Exactly.
I think, where you just keep doing your own thing, and the best revenge you can get is not giving them the time of day, not letting them change who you are, and, giving them that strength over you, and instead, like, hey, live your best life.
Yeah, exactly.
And let it be known to anyone who's watching, listening, whatever, but like you are unique. Like that is an objective fact, unless you're an identical twin. In which case, if you're an identical twin,
in which case, just dress differently.
Yeah, pursue different hobbies or something. I don't know. You are genetically identical to someone else. No, but all joking aside, like it is an objective fact that you are unique, and anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is wrong. First off, and secondly, like, kind of probably doing it because they're sad and bitter and not getting the same love and support that you are in a lot of cases. And so that's why it definitely made me sad to have a lot of people kind of ridicule me or kind of throw that line back in my face, or I don't know, like be done with me at the end of high school because of quotes like that and things like that, and not really celebrate my victories like I was hoping that they would. But at the same time, I'm like, I get it to some extent. I can't really hold it against you. It's sad, and I'm sorry that you don't see yourself as the same way. I wish there was a way that I could lift you up too, but it's
come
just
on, be real.
things.
You don't really think that in that moment. In that
Certainly.
moment, you're like, you jerk. You are the worst. I hope you go off in a corner and poop. Like,
no. Wow, pooping in a corner. Steph. Wow, that's harsh.
I know.
You're harsh. No, mine wasn't nearly as like for me. It wasn't nearly as mean as you. To me, I did find it profoundly sad.
Yeah.
That other people wouldn't hold themselves on a pedestal like they deserve to, because each of those people, I can think of the individuals to this day. And again, like, it shows you just how impactful these moments are in your life. Like, I can think back to the exact locations and people who kind of threw it back in my face, what they said, things like that. And I can think about each of them, and I can see what made them unique and special, and why they were as popular or as interesting as they were in high school. And like, hey, I'm sorry that you don't see yourself as as special as you deserve to be, because I see those qualities in you guys, and it's, I don't know, like, it's, don't let other people pull you down. And there's a lot of pressure in society to try and like
to get to the middle.
to stay in the middle, and if they see someone rising up or with special talents or whatever, like, hey, we're gonna like drag you back. And I don't know why humans are like that, and it's so sad that society kind of has that sort of mentality. And so, like, don't let them do that. Is kind of the takeaway.
Yeah,
there.
If you have a different personality quirk, or you have a special trait, you have a special talent, embrace it, and don't be like deterred by people saying that it's not worthwhile, or it's not special, or it's not interesting enough, or that you're too interesting and you should just quiet down already, because what was it? History was never made by well-behaved people.
Ooh,
or like whatever it is.
Too.
Yeah, I've always liked that one, but
it is.
But I think it's nice to see, like, so in the chat there are also a lot of people who I think are relating to this, and they're like, oh my gosh, someone else went through something similar too. Like I've gone through like a similar thing, that kind of stuff. So I know that's the other thing. I think a lot of people have these experiences, and they're, like you said, they're really memorable and they really stick with you, and they're isolating in the moment, right? That's one of the things that makes them so powerful, is that they make you feel really alone, and like you are singled out as the person that everyone hates. And so you feel like no one else goes through this, or like it's not even okay to talk about because you feel so isolated. But so many people go through this kind of stuff too, and come out stronger, more positive, more empathetic on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Anything else about that?
No, I don't think so. Like
Lady Gaga, good on you.
Yeah, good on Lady. Be the Lady Gaga in your own life, because wear your meat dresses wherever you feel like it. She wore meat dresses. I wear bright lime green zoot suits. What do you wear, Steph?
Wait, when you feel good or what?
I don't know. I was just thinking of the ridiculous things that people wear.
Oh gosh.
Because Lady Gaga, one of the things that she was made fun of was her unique sense of style. Her odd sense of style. So wearing her meat dresses around, that paid off well for her.
If I had my druthers, I'd probably just wear pajamas most of the time. If I'm being really honest.
Hashtag relatable.
If my waistband has a drawstring, I'm in a good place.
Great. Fantastic.
All right, next.
Let's see. And what else do we have here? We have the Momo. Oh, I'm not allowed to say that. Shoot. I already screwed it up.
Okay, so Jason was asking us if we could talk about this topic, about Momo, without actually saying the word. And so we were like, okay, well, we probably have to say it once in order to introduce the topic, but then we'll come up with other ways of saying it so that YouTube doesn't get flagged.
Mamo.
Mamo. He suggested Amam. Apparently that was going around as like an option for us to say. We could say Amam instead.
The Nom Nom Challenge.
Yeah, the Nom Nom Challenge.
Nom 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 Nom.
So in case you haven't been like, I guess this has been all over like all social media platforms. It's actually not just YouTube, because it's been spread around a ton by people who just don't know any better on Facebook. Basically, and in like news media and stuff, it's been crazy. So there's a hoax.
New Tide Pod.
Yeah, it's the new, yeah, but it's not real at all, is the thing. So the backstory is that there's a quote-unquote challenge going around in children's programming where a scary figure called Momo appears on the screen. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Called Mamo appears on the screen and tells children to do things that are dangerous.
You're showing the word on screen.
Stop. Get it off of there, Chris.
No, it's fine. It's there.
And tells kids to do dangerous things, even hurting themselves or others. And so this went around as like this huge scare of like, oh my gosh, children's content on YouTube is polluted again with like this awful character who's telling your kids to hurt themselves. And so all these parents and alarmist groups were like educating their kids about Mamo, and they're going, little Timmy, if you see in your video, make sure you run away and tell mommy. So here's
Tell
the
your
thing.
Mamo if you see the Mamo.
The Mamo. So here's the thing, is it's not real. This character does not appear in children's videos and tell them to do anything. It's a hoax. But because parents aren't watching what their kids are watching on YouTube, and news media picks up. Yeah, so you can give this backstory in a second.
Okay.
So what happened was basically parents who aren't paying attention and news media who's even less paying attention picks up on this story, and they're like, oh man, YouTube's at it again with the dangerous content. And so their news stories literally worldwide being like, warn your kids, we have to take up arms against this huge problem. And it's all fake. And you can give the backstory.
Well, I don't really have much of the backstory. It started as a creepypasta. The whole Mamo character started as a creepypasta. There's this artist in Japan who created this really odd statue of like a creepy-faced girl with like the body of a chicken, or like a little bird body and a really creepy wide-eyed statue. And it's great for clickbait. It's a really compelling face. It's really disturbing, but it was just a creepypasta. There was a challenge that went around, middle of last year. This is why I've been surprised to see it pop up. I believe there was a challenge that went around last year that was the Mamo challenge, where I believe 2 people did die, as I understand it.
But that didn't actually involve this character, did it?
It did. It was called the Mamo challenge, but it happened over a year ago. And so now...
Are we sure that happened?
As I understand, and again, this is the problem with news in today's kind of day and age, is there's so many different sources, and it's very easy for those sources to kind of be faked. But as I understand it, so even before Mamo, you had the Blue Whale Challenge, which was also one of these sorts of like self-harm, we're going to ask you to do stepwise, increasingly ridiculous, like dangerous asks to win the challenge, complete the challenge or whatever, and become.
Which are extremely scary, right? The idea that this would appear in kids' program is genuinely scary. We're not trying to discount that at all.
No. And so the blue whale was the first thing, and the guy was convicted for it. Like, he admitted to it. A couple, young people died because of it. I believe Mamo was then positioned as kind of like the next iteration of that. And I believe, and again, like, maybe the chat can call this out, but I believe 2 people, back when this was a thing, actually, completed the challenge, which ultimately results in you,
Several people in the chat are confirming that a challenge called that did happen. And a couple people have mentioned that it happened on WhatsApp.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think it was
WhatsApp
on
right.
YouTube.
No, certainly not. But it all started as, like, you get text messages from
that's what it
Mamo.
is.
Yeah.
It's text messages, and recently people have gone back and tried to trigger that challenge again using WhatsApp and have actually not been successful. Like, the numbers that they've texted and stuff, they haven't gotten any of those kinds of messages back.
Right. So I think, first off, it was a real thing.
Yeah,
that happened.
Nina Walters and others, thank you for calling out that that was on WhatsApp, and it was text-based.
Right. And so this idea, and again, this goes to this idea of, first off, it's been defunct for a while. And so for it to suddenly get pulled into the pop culture spotlight as this, emerging trend is wrong. It's false, and to call it like a YouTube children's content trend is also wrong and false. Like Stephanie said, it started on WhatsApp. It was primarily text-based. And so I think that's the reason we bring this up, and the reason we want to talk about it is it showcases a lot of the dangerous things that are happening in media, in the way that, like, people talk about YouTube and kind of the prejudices that exist around YouTube, and how easy it is to manufacture scares around YouTube as a means of discrediting it as a platform, as a means of getting advertisers to pull out, as a means of showcasing this is not a good place for you or your kids, so ignore it, disqualify it. And it even goes to the game theory video that we posted shortly before this live stream, where I'm talking about kind of the hypocrisy of advertisers, right?
Yeah.
Where no one wants this platform to be legitimate, and so you create a lot of these kind of like false news stories about it.
And we're talking about a lot of, like, just in general, this applies to social video platforms in general, right? They're known for being like spreaders of fake news or having problems with fake news, that kind of stuff. So this is not to discount anything that actually is dangerous. You do want to get unsavory content off of the platform. And stuff like that. This is just to highlight the fact that, like, it's very easy to make up a story and have it picked up by all of the media who are very interested in any kind of scandalous tidbits that come out of YouTube. Now, they're like, I would say when it comes to other stuff, like Facebook has had its share of, like, actual, like, bad problems with fake news, and there's plenty of bad stuff that's also on all of these platforms that does need to be weeded out. We talked a little bit last week about the Facebook moderator situation. Like, there's, like, the dregs on these platforms are awful, but you can also make up stories, like, basically anywhere, and mainstream media isn't paying attention enough to these platforms to actually know what's on them.
Right, and people don't fact check it either.
No one fact checks it.
In this day, and this is interesting, because in this day and age of you need the biggest headline as soon as the story hits, and it needs to be first to press so that way it gets the most reblogs and shares and whatever, no one's actually taking the time to actually, one, double check what's truly going on, two, maybe it doesn't even matter for a lot of them, and then three, do a deep analysis of what actually happened, like, in retrospect. It's all about, like, this is a thing that's happening, let's move on to the next thing that's happening as soon as that one's over, and move on to like, no one actually, like, stops and looks at, like, hey, maybe this wasn't an actual story, or maybe we're doing more harm than good by covering this stuff. And this is, it's one of the reasons why it's interesting to run channels that are all about retrospective analysis of pop culture, news stories, this and that, because we're one of the few that's actually taking the time to go back and look at, the ramifications of some of this stuff in a lot of cases. Like our film theory on the Tide Pod Challenge, it totally got, at this point, it's totally age-gated, it's totally been throttled. Like, you will never see that thing ever again unless you actively seek it out on the channel. But I was really proud of it because what we did was we were able to retroactively look at the number of Tide Pod videos that were happening around the time of this press coverage. And before the press coverage started to really hit big, the trend had crested and it had only hit like a couple hundred videos. But as soon as, mainstream media and other like resources started covering the story about this epidemic that's plaguing your children, suddenly the news got out there and it was exposed to so many more people. What was a small internet niche that was like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of online video suddenly saw a resurgence into the thousands. And it wasn't because of shares, it wasn't because of whatever, it was because of the mainstream coverage that sort of thing got. A year ago, I'd say very few people knew about the Mamo Challenge. But now all of a sudden, because it's gotten resurgent, like everyone's talking about it. And so you're getting more awareness. And the problem with that is once you kind of put that idea in people's heads, you show them that it's an option. You show them that this is, and you can't put the cat back in the bag at that point.
It's as sad as it is to say, it's one of the reasons why people heavily debate how much coverage school shootings should get
100%.
and how much, and you should never show that there are now guidelines in place about you should never show the face of the shooter, you shouldn't share their name because you don't want to give them publicity, because you don't want to put the idea into other people's heads that they can get famous from doing something dangerous and by hurting others, right? So there's this balance, and I don't think that it's sort of gone unchecked in the world of like reporting on things that happen on the internet, reporting on social media platforms and stuff like that. There's like no boundaries, and so everyone is just really into like, let's dig up the dirt, let's like find the most salacious thing we can talk about and put it in the headline, and it does. If the idea wasn't out there before, or it was in a really small, tiny community, it's now huge and public and is maybe doing more harm than good, actually, by getting so much publicity and going so far beyond the facts of what's actually happening.
Right, exactly. It is. It's one of those things that, like, humans, I think by their nature, in a lot of cases, aren't necessarily thinking about a lot of, unless you actively teach someone, hey, a school shooting is a possibility. Like, I don't think many people would automatically jump to the conclusion of like, oh, that's a thing that exists in the world, right? But if all of a sudden it's on all the news media and this and that, it's like, oh, wait, people can take guns into places where they probably shouldn't take guns to. Like, and all it takes is that one or two people to kind of like take that message and be like, well, I can do it now too. It's dangerous. It's
very scary. Yeah, it's like just like really, really scary. And on the one hand, you're like, hey, when tragedies happen, you have to report them. You have a responsibility to report what's happening in the world, and it's important that people know to try and prevent things in the future. But there's definitely a line between giving publicity to people who are doing bad things and reporting on the bad things that are happening to help stop them, right? And there's like no balance on the internet when it comes to that whatsoever.
Right. I mean,
crazy.
Everyone wants the thing that's going to get them the most clicks.
Yeah, it's
honestly.
all about the clicks.
It's all about them clicks. The health and safety of everyone else be darned.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things, and I don't know if there will come a time in which people start looking at this stuff and start kind of making changes around it, or think like, oh, maybe the way we cover this stuff is the thing that's affecting it.
I mean, I think it's going to take like a groundswell, or even like something regulatory to like set rules in place or whatever, because everyone will find the lowest common denominator. But I think when people demand higher quality, that's when they'll get it. Well, like when the market demands it, it'll be there. But until people stop just settling for the lowest common denominator, that's all we're going to get, right? Okay, so that was really heavy. We have like 10 minutes left. We've covered a lot of these like really intense topics today. Is there anything fun we can talk about?
We talked about your citizenship, Stephanie.
I know, that was exciting.
We could also, I mean, if we're talking about illegitimate social media platforms or illegitimizing social media platforms, and we talked about movies, Apparently, Steven Spielberg is campaigning to disqualify streaming services from getting to nominate their movies for Oscars.
Okay. So yeah, this is like slightly farther flung than YouTube, but it still relates to like digital stuff, and actually, it could relate to YouTube originals.
He
too.
claims that since Netflix and Hulu are home viewing services, their content should not be Oscar worthy and are instead relegated to the Emmys.
Oh, so that means basically the long and short of that is if a movie gets made and it goes straight to Netflix, like think Bird Box, that movie could never be nominated for an Oscar because it's on Netflix. And I think that this is Steven Spielberg having a bee in his pants about streaming services and digitally created like works of art, and I think he's jelly.
Old man yells at cloud is what this screams to me. And I'm really bummed out about this too, because I've historically loved Steven Spielberg's movies, and so to see him kind of like shake his fists at like the oncoming age of digital media and be like, no, this is not like, that's stupid to me. That's really dumb. I think, in this day and age, Roma, for instance, was nominated for Oscar Best Picture. I'm sure this is where this is coming from, right? So Netflix basically bought the movie Roma to be distributed exclusively on Netflix, and then that became one of the Oscar nominees for Best Picture. And so for the first time ever, Netflix, a streaming service, was nominated for a Best Picture winner, and it was like the sign of the times that, like, is theater changing? Is theater dying? Whatever. The thing is, it's like that movie is still the same movie had it aired in theaters.
That's the thing that's crazy. It's like just because people don't go to a physical movie theater to watch a film doesn't make it any less of a film, doesn't make it any less Oscar worthy, doesn't make it any less artistic. He's crazy. I think this is like crazy.
Well, I will argue a couple things here because I somewhat get where he's coming from.
Go home.
No, because and you and I say this all the time, Steph, and I do think it merits us discussing this, and I'd be curious to hear what the chat says and what Twitter says.
The chat says bee in his pants, okay?
I get it. I understand. It's uncomfortable to have a bee in your pants. You're afraid it might sting in appropriate areas. But the thing to remember is, and this is something that we talk about when we consult branded clients, other YouTubers, is understanding the importance of the platform that you're working on, right? And so if you're creating a YouTube video, in a lot of cases, if you're playing around in the medium of YouTube videos, it's going to look and feel and sound different than if you're playing in a theater, if you're playing on a TV screen. And so there is an argument to be made here. Like, again, me playing devil's advocate here, there is an argument to be made here that if you are specifically making a piece of art for a movie theater, it is a very different viewing experience than if you're watching it at home on a smaller screen in a living room setting. And I think the challenge there is it's a very nuanced position to take, and I don't think anyone has ever considered those differences.
So I don't think anyone is considering those nuances. First of all, yeah,
sure.
No one I think cares enough about
right.
about those nuances to go to battle for them. The other thing I would argue here, though, is that when you give an Oscar to a movie, you're saying that this is the movie that should be archived in history as a great movie this year. And in any type of replaying or revisiting of cinema history, you're going to go back and watch that movie on a TV screen. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go back and be like, hey, I'm watching an Oscar movie right now, which means I can only watch it to its real effect in a movie theater.
There are aficionados, though, and they have those screenings of like Casablanca on the big screen, the way it was meant to be seen.
It's just for funsies.
I mean, it is. I get it. But I will also argue that there are certain categories of Oscar that actually make more sense if you're kind of limiting it to theater, right? So like there are
cinematography, I give you that.
No, I was going to say like sound mixing, because sound is probably the most, I would say, is one of the most transformative things that is different about a movie screen versus a television screen. Unless you have an at-home theater with like Dolby Atmos surround sound, # not sponsored, but previously sponsored by Dolby.
But not even theaters have all of those Dolby Atmos surround sound.
See, that's the other thing.
The theaters that you're watching them in have different surround sound. So I take your point with that, but I see ya, But I raise you the fact that you're not going to hear the same sound in every movie theater around the country.
That's 100%
They're all
true.
different sizes. They all
Yep.
have different acoustics, and they all have different sound systems. If you see it in Dolby, maybe that's the only real experience.
See, and I think you're totally right, and I think you hit on something that Steven Spielberg seems to be missing in this whole thing, is that you would have a point if every theater aired every movie in the exact same way, and so what qualified as a movie was one standard definition, but it isn't. Like Stephanie said, you have some theaters that are equipped with Dolby sound, some that aren't. You have some that are equipped with three-dimensional, or you have some that are airing in three-dimensional, some aren't. You have IMAX movies versus regular screen movies.
Yeah, so what's the real version of a movie that should be considered for an Oscar
No,
then?
100%. I get it. I'm totally on board with that. And I think that while Steven Spielberg could have some arguments around the different settings and the different experiences in this, I don't think he's thinking about it in that way. And even if he was thinking about it in that way, his argument fails for exactly those reasons.
Be in his pants.
Boom! Dropping the mic of logic upon you, Steven Spielberg. I'm sorry that Ready Player One wasn't as successful as you wanted it to be, and now you're just bitter about it.
Prime Meridian says it's too loud in theaters. I agree.
It sometimes
that
is.
sound is so loud in there
We've
sometimes.
gone to some of the specialty like surround sound theaters, and it's like
Oh my gosh, it's deafening.
you're like in an earthquake.
Yeah.
It's like bring your headphones to listen to the movie. We saw We Will Rock You, or not We Will Rock You, Bohemian Rhapsody. Sorry,
Rhapsody.
We Will Rock You is the onstage musical version of the Queen story. One of the longest running British musicals, actually, the story of Queen. Or a jukebox musical based on Queen. But we saw Bohemian Rhapsody in one of those big surround sound, like epic sound theaters. And oh boy, it was intense. It
Yeah.
was intense.
Your seat like shakes.
It does.
Anyway.
You're like, I'm suffering permanent hearing loss from this. The sound is so intense. So yeah, Steven Spielberg, I'm sorry. Get with the times. Sell a movie to Netflix. You'll feel better. It just is, like a good movie. And oh man, we kind of come full circle. A good movie is a good movie is a good movie. A good story is a good story is a good story.
Oh man, that was so nice. What a good button on the end of that episode.
Wow.
And with that, we've spilled the tea for today.
Unbranded, carbonated Diet Beverage X.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
Episode 3.
And cheers to you, friends. Let us know what news stories you want us to cover next week as we sit down on the couch and spill the tea. In the meantime, we'll be back on Thursday for a regular type live stream, not a podcasty live stream, and then we're back with more T-Series, more of this T-Series, GTLive, next Tuesday. So let us know what articles you want us to cover. And in the meantime, that's just a cast, a podcast with video components. Still got to work on this outro.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Let's say goodbye in the chat, shall we?
Lindsay says cheers. AMC Gaming says cheers.
Seeking Elegance says Truman Show theory. I love Truman Show.
Oh, right.
So great. One of my all-time favorites.
Elijah Hannah says bye.
Johanna Elizabeth says cheers. Cheers to you.